Welcome to lesson 24, and this one is called Vacation Vibes, Rest and Relax and Stay on Track. So if you have been on vacations before while you've been on a diet, I'm sure you know what it's like where you can see all this food in front of you. Maybe you're on a cruise and there's a buffet and you think, how on earth can I resist all of this food? So I didn't go on a vacation while I was losing my weight, but I went on one after I'd lost my weight, and I can see that there are ways to make this work so that you don't sabotage your diet. Now, when I was losing the weight, I would go to restaurants and I did do a little bit of traveling, but overall I wasn't away for like weeks on end. So it wasn't as hard in that if I, cheated and I had food that I was not used to having while I was more strict on my diet, that was okay. But when you're away for a longer chunk of time, it's really hard because you're not the one cooking any of the food. You're at the mercy of whatever restaurant you walk into and whatever food that they have that's available. Or if you're on that cruise and you can have all the food that you want, that's going to be really hard. So what do? This is just an example of a menu. And when you're looking at a menu, you're going to say, what can I have? And I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the other lesson about looking at menus and realizing that pretty much anything is available for you to eat. And to try to take the rules off so that when you are out of the house, you don't have to be so strict. And that makes this more sustainable and makes you not go off the diet. Instead of saying, I can only have certain things, then it's not going to work as well. So when you're looking at a menu, where do you even start to see, okay, what can I eat? What can I not eat? So we look at two different things. We're looking at, in general, the grains, which are going to be mostly in the appetizers and the desserts, unless you're at an Italian restaurant where, of course, there's lots of pasta. So try to look at the appetizer list, for example, and there's a lot of things that are okay, that are not going to make you want to overeat them. That's mostly the point here, is that you're not going to want seconds and thirds, or you're going to finish somebody else's plate as well. So garlic bread, for me, bread was one of those things that I couldn't stop eating. If they brought bread before they brought the main course, I would have 1 piece and 2 pieces and 3 pieces, and then I'm full, and then I'm not actually eating the proper meal. Bread is one thing when you're losing the weight to maybe have 1 bite or 2 bites and say, I'm not going to have any more. And you just say, that's it. I am determined to get through this stage. It's a difficult stage to get through when you're tempted and when you're used to having 4 or 5 pieces of bread, to say, no, this is all I'm going to have. And it takes a little bit of discipline, because this isn't like your house where maybe you've said, I'm not going to have any bread in the house, or it's going to be out of sight, out of mind. So when you're at a restaurant and they bring it to you, you don't really have a choice unless you say, please don't bring the bread. But if other people you're eating with like the bread, then that's fine and they can have it if they want. But for you to just say, I'm just going to have 2 bites, going to put some butter on it and enjoy that. And like I mentioned in the other lesson about the 0-carb drinks, you can have your water with the lemon and it can still feel like you're splurging a little bit, but you're not going to sabotage, you're not going to make yourself feel guilty at the end. I hate the fact that we have to think about feeling guilty, but that's really what we feel like is, oh, I screwed up, I messed up, I did a bad thing. If we take the morals off, it's not good or bad, it's just going to slow our weight loss down if we have pop instead of water. So back to the menu, when you're looking at it, just look for the grains. Mostly anything that's made of corn or wheat or rice, any of those kinds of foods are going to be higher in carbs and might make you tend to eat more of them than eat of the whole foods, which are the vegetables, the meats, fruits, that kind of a thing. And then when you're looking at the dessert list, pretty much while you're losing the weight, this is where, unless somebody else at the table is ordering this, then maybe say no to it while you're losing the weight, because it might be too hard to just have those 2 bites when you're with a group. But if you can, have just 2 bites because somebody else has ordered it, and you say, can I just have 2 bites? Because those are always the best tasting. Otherwise, maybe stay off of the desserts when you're out on your vacation, just because it's going to be a longer chunk of time. So the 2-bite rule works for me when I am just going out for one meal at a time, like out for a dinner or something like that. But when I'm on vacation, and if I had the 2-bite rule where it's like every single meal for 3 weeks in a row, I'd probably put some weight back on. I would be tempted to overeat more and more and more, and I would slide back into my binging. So the 2-bite rule, I think, works really well when it's just this one-off dinner here, one-off dinner there. When you're on vacation, try to allow yourself some things that are fun, but maybe in those medium risky foods category, not the high risk food category. Because if you're around that all the time, it's really hard. Once your body gets used to eating those sugars again and used to consuming those high carb foods, it's really, really hard to resist them because your body gets used to this higher level of sugar in your system. And it's really, really difficult. So when I was on my vacation this last fall down to South America, my son's learning Spanish, so we went down to see him. And we went to a place where they have a lot of rice and beans, and that I'm not tempted to overeat. But then they had delicious desserts, which were like a flan, and oh my goodness, they were so, so good. So I did buy one at a grocery store while we were staying at the Airbnb, and I cut it into tiny pieces, and I ate that over several days. So I was able to resist, but that was because I was in control of that portion. Whereas if I ordered at a restaurant, I definitely had to share it with everybody because I really loved the taste of it. And I didn't order it very often, but when I did order it, I shared it with a lot of people. So that did work. But I'm thinking if you are on a cruise or you're with people that are eating out at restaurants that you're maybe tempted by those foods more than other foods, those are going to be harder for you to resist those. So sometimes you might have to say, okay, I don't like this elimination idea, but for a time, for a week, for 2 weeks, I'm going to eliminate chocolate, or I'm going to eliminate the puddings, or I'm going to eliminate the cakes just for this time. And that might be easier to say no for a small chunk of time than to allow yourself a little bit and then it opens the floodgates and you say, I can't stop. You're going to have to test this out on your own. Everybody's individual in this situation. Maybe you're going to go on a picnic while you're out and you go for a day trip, from the main tour group. And you can decide what you're going to pack in that picnic lunch. And then that gives you a feeling of being in control. And you can say, okay, I know what I'm going to pack, and that's all we're going to take for the day. That's another option. These are just 5 points to remember when you're on vacation, when you're traveling, and when you're trying to lose the weight. So number 1, aim for 90% clean eating for while you're eating out, because you can be more strict when you're at home. So you don't have to do 100%, and you don't have to do 80-20, which I find never works because 20% is a big chunk. It usually gets me into eating too many carbs. I'm not actually estimating it exactly 90-10. But the mentality is it's a really high percentage of the clean one ingredient foods compared to the non-clean eating. So number 2, choose low carb if possible. And it's really hard depending on where you're traveling to. If, like example, if rice is the main staple or pasta is the main staple food for that country, then it's going to be hard to go low carb in that situation. So try to eat more of whatever they put on the pasta, more of whatever they put on the rice, because those things are going to be lower in carbs. Number 3, use the 2-bite rule for desserts. As I mentioned before, that I think works really well when it's a one-off, but when you're gone for a chunk of time, the 2-bite rule, you can try it out. If you're tempted and you have the 3rd bite and the 4th bite and the 5th bite, maybe put that on the back burner and just say, okay, I'm not going to have this food for the next week because I can't stop. So test it, try it out. Number 4, just go for drinks instead if trying intermittent fasting. So say you are on a cruise, say you are on a tour group and you've got 3 meals a day and you say, I want to do this intermittent fasting, I'm just going to do 2 meals a day. Order a glass of water, order a second glass of water, order a club soda, order a sparkling water, something that has 0 carbs, and just sit through the meal and enjoy the fact that you're letting your body rest and you're using up those stored meals on your body for that time that you're not going to eat. Number 5, remind yourself it's okay to not be perfect. It's impossible to be perfect. We are human. So remind yourself that this is a journey and it's going to be messy. It's going to be complicated. It's not going to be perfect. And that's the whole point of living, is that we make mistakes and then we learn from them and we try again and we try again. But eventually you make it. Eventually you do get through this. And it's not perfect, and it's not going to be perfect for anybody. There is no perfect diet out there. Everybody has to adapt it. If somebody loses weight and is successful on a diet, they have had to adapt it to their lifestyle, to their environment, to going on a vacation, to eating out. They've had to adapt it because nobody's circumstances is exactly the same. So just remember that. It's okay if you're at 90% instead of 5% like in the past, where you were eating 95% high carb foods and only 5% non-high carb foods. Then 90-10, the 10% that's not perfect, is okay. So just remember, this is so flexible. The point is that you are doing a little bit every day, moving in the direction, and you know that there's an end to it. Like, I can't guarantee your results, but almost 99% of people can lose the weight and keep it off when we start to see all of these things that work together, and that it's not one thing that's going to make it work. It's a lot of things that's going to make it work. So take the pressure off, realize, okay, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. There's these little swerves in the road, and you're going to have to get used to this long term. This is the point, is the journey of losing the weight is not much different than the journey of maintaining the weight. If you think of exercise, you don't just exercise and then you get in shape and then you don't have to do anything else. It's very similar of getting in shape to staying in shape. That's similar for weight loss. And I've discovered that in the last 2.5 years since I've been able to maintain the weight loss and realize, wow, it's not much different. So learning to live life while you're losing weight, learning to make it work, learning to say, this is what I can do for years and years and years. And you will be eating, of course, a little bit less while you're losing the weight, but the principles, the lifestyle changes that you make will make it sustainable long term, and you will be healthier, you'll be happier, and life will be so much better when you aren't holding on to all that weight. I'm positive that you're going to start to feel better as you start to lose the weight, and that's going to continue to motivate you, and it's an upward spiral, which is a good thing. Maybe you're going to a cold place on your vacation, and maybe it's an Alaskan cruise, or maybe you're going to a skiing retreat. That's not going to be much different when you are going to try to eat out, except you're going to be inside more, and it's possible that there's going to be a little bit more food around and you're maybe bored, and what are you going to do because you're stuck inside? Then you might end up being tempted to eat more just because of the fact that it's cold outside wherever you actually are going on that vacation. So that's just one thing to realize, that the colder vacations might be harder to resist if you are stuck inside more. That's just something to think about and to think through ahead of time before you actually go on the vacation, and think it through and say, how am I going to resist having multiple cups of hot chocolate and all of these things that we're used to when we're maybe having a vacation in a colder location. So think through what you're going to do in those situations, but don't eliminate the fun things in your life. Try to still enjoy life and work around it and figure out and realize it's okay if it's not perfect. Do you like playing tennis or maybe pickleball or badminton? These are things that normally we do with other people, and that is a good thing when we're trying to lose weight and we're trying to figure out how to get this weight off of our body. When we have other people to do things with, to do activities with, and to hold us accountable, this can really help us get to our goal and reach our goal. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the next lesson.